All right, so today we are checking out one of the most famous pirates during the great age of piracy, and this is Stede Bonnet. So Stede Bonnet has a different story than any pirate there is, and what separated him from every other pirate was he was rich, he was successful, he owned a plantation in Barbados, but yet he chose to pursue the life of piracy. So Stede Bonnet was born in 1688 on the island of Barbados, and his parents owned this large plantation that he ended up inheriting. He got married in 1709 and ended up having about 4 children. So it seems like Stede Bonnet's got everything going good for him. He's a wealthy man, got a large plantation, 4 kids, and a wife who was a daughter of a plantation owner too. And he does something very odd in 1717. He buys this ship and names it the Revenge, equips it with 10 cannons, and becomes a pirate. So Stede Bonnet didn't have any experience at sailing. He wasn't a good fighter, had no experience at this at all. Some say that he had a midlife crisis. Others say that his wife, it was problems at home with his wife. I don't know the real reason, but that is written down in history about the wife part. So, anyways, Stede Bonnet then hires a crew of pirates, and instead of them getting paid by the loot, he pays them wages, which is where he got the nickname the Gentleman's Pirate. So Stede Bonnet probably knew he had to pay these guys wages. Otherwise, they would probably just take over a ship and they would probably pick the best fighter, the best leader amongst the crew to be the captain. So he knew, I got to pay these guys so I can stay the captain. Otherwise, they're gonna toss me overboard. So then the gentleman's pirate and his crew headed north to the east coast of the United States of America, where he was actually fairly successful. So the first stop was off the coast of Virginia, where they raided 4 ships, 2 from Scotland, 1 from England, and 1 from Barbados. They let 3 of them go, but the one from Barbados he actually sunk, and he that was kind of a common thing when he seen a boat that was headed back to Barbados, and they don't know if it was because they didn't want the word to get back to the people there, or he just had something against Barbados. So they head all the way up to New York, raiding ships, and then they end up going back down towards Nassau. And in total, they ended up raiding about 8 ships, all successful raids, sinking 2 that was from Barbados. But they had to spend the money, they had to spend the loot. So Nassau was kind of a haven for pirates. So they headed up to Nassau to spend some loot. And this is where he meets the most famous pirate of all, Blackbeard. Unfortunately for him, but they ended up becoming partners because Blackbeard at the time was second in command on a boat under Ben Hornigo. So Stede Bonnet and Blackbeard ended up getting a convoy of about 4 ships with 300 to 400 men. But unfortunately for Bonnet, he became kind of a prisoner or a guest, you could say, because Blackbeard was in charge of all the ships. He actually put somebody else in charge of the Revenge, not Bonnet. So he was still getting loot and stuff, but he became depressed, and he kind of just wished he would never became a pirate. I mean, I would feel the same way if I was in his shoes. But so they head down to the West Indies, and they're right outside of St. Vincent when Blackbeard captures his famous boat, Queen Anne's Revenge, which was called the La Concord at the time. It was a slave boat, 500 slaves on it, big old ship. He captures it, and basically he's like, yeah, told Bonnet, you can just go do whatever you want. I'm kind of done with you. Um, of course, Bonnet's happy about this. He's back in charge. He's the captain. But his crew members actually respected and was pretty scared of Blackbeard. Um, Kind of the opposite of Bonnet. But they end up getting in a skirmish with another boat, which Bonnet gets hurt in. They lose the skirmish, and his crew's just kind of just upset. Well, they end up encountering Blackbeard's convoy again, and they convince Blackbeard, "Hey, can you take back over this ship?" And there it is again. Bonnet's right back under Blackbeard as a prisoner. So they then head back up north to South Carolina, Charleston, and this is where they do Blackbeard's biggest move of his career, which I do got a 4-part series about Blackbeard, and you can go check it out. But they blockade the Port of Charleston for 6 days and capturing supplies and other stuff. But then they head up to Topsail, North Carolina, and this is where the Queen Anne's Revenge hits the bottom and ends up sinking. So Stede Bonnet, Blackbeard, and all the crew members then decide to get a royal pardon from the governor of North Carolina, and they do. And basically, they done this to try to reduce piracy, and it was a one-time thing. If you went back to being a pirate, you were back on the list to get hung. So Stede Bonnet stays back a few days, and at this time, Blackbeard starts stripping down the Revenge of all its cannons and everything. And by the time Stede Bonnet gets back with his men, they're all mad. They're ready to get after Blackbeard. So Bonnet and his crew decide once they get the boat back to running and equipped with cannons, they were going to go after Blackbeard, and that's what they did. So Bonnet and his crew actually caught word that Blackbeard was at an inlet off the coast of North Carolina. So he and his men headed that way, and when they was on their way there, they noticed 20 to 30 men standing on the shore, and they went over there, and it was actually Blackbeard's crew. Some of Blackbeard's crew. He was sizing down. So they were mad. They wanted revenge. They joined the crew, and now Bonnet's got a bigger crew, a bigger ship, so he wants to go against Blackbeard. But unfortunately for Bonnet, he never seen Blackbeard again. So at this point, Bonnet and his crew have no food, money, or rum. So what do next? They're not considered pirates at this point because they took the royal pardon, but they return to piracy and attack a couple boats. They get their rum, they get some pork, and they're back on the list as a pirate. So at this point, Bonnet changes his name to Captain Thomas to try to keep a lower profile. And he actually starts to become a very successful pirate. People feared him, and actually he was one of the guys to implement prisoners walking off the plank. He was so successful, he actually sunk and captured, raided 12 boats off the coast of the United States of America. And this kind of got the attention of governors, especially Governor Johnson of South Carolina. So Bonnet was at a place called Cape Fear. Governor Johnson sent 2 ships to Cape Fear to capture him. And they ended up battling it out, but Bonnet came up short, and him and his crew just surrendered. So they take Bonnet and his crew members, 33 of them to be exact, into Charleston, South Carolina to be tried. And actually, Bonnet ended up escaping. 3 days later, being caught. And when they brought him back, all his crew members was hung, and there was one open. So there was an open noose, and the authorities looked at Bonnet and said, "That one's for you." So on December 10th, 1718, Bonnet's pirate legacy came to an end. Thank you all for watching. Like, subscribe, follow. Appreciate it.